Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Easy Peasy Books podcast. And I am your host, Gillian Whitney. And today I have kind of an interesting and very personal topic, which is it's called Stepping Off the Merry-Go-Round, My Summer of Renewal. And this is a kind of a what I did during my summer vacation kind of podcast. And like I said, it's very personal. And I really struggled with whether I wanted to share this or not, but it actually frames what I'm thinking about moving forward. And also, too, I think this is a conversation worth having because there may be there may be people out there struggling with what I struggled with during the summer. So if this relates to you, I hope that this will expand your ideas of moving forward on your own about where you are with your business and your writing and everything in between. So let's kind of just get stuck right in. So I'm going to start off with basically my breaking point. So where I was at the beginning of the summer and kind of what led to me stepping off the merry-go-round in the first place. So essentially what happened was I had in the spring, I did a huge relocation, moving my entire world from Las Vegas, Nevada to San Antonio, Texas, and moving everything that I had. And essentially, going back even further, about 5 years ago, maybe six, seven, I'm terrible with numbers, but about 5 years ago, my husband and I had decided that we wanted to go and relocate. And so we had basically sold everything in our house. We were living in northern Utah at the time. We decided we wanted to just kind of, be grown up kids, go out and do something fun. So we decided we're going to move abroad, and we moved abroad to the Middle East. We picked up and we moved to Israel. And when we sold our house and we took all of our personal effects and anything that was kind of like, furniture, we let go, no problem with that. But personal effects we put in storage. And then, of course, we went off to Israel for a year and a half, and then we came back to the United States. And then for the last 3 years, well, we lived 2 years in Las Vegas with family and helping family and do stuff, which is why we came back to the United States in the first place. But essentially, then for 3 years, we did this digital nomad lifestyle where in 3 years, we lived in 30 apartments, and we lived all across the country. We lived in Florida and Tennessee, and we went to Kansas City, and we went to Texas, and we went to New Mexico. We went to all these different places. We went to Arizona. We even hopped around different parts of Nevada, and we wanted to see where is the place that we wanted to be. And I'm telling you, 30 apartments in 3 years is exhausting. Never mind just trying to get your mail through the post office and all the change of addresses, but just this constantly packing, unpacking, and not knowing how long we were going to stay in a particular place and moving on. And just in Texas, we lived in Austin, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and then a couple of small towns in between. So we really scoped out the planet with where would be our next place. And so back in the spring of this year, we did the final, okay, we are all in on Texas. We want to live in Texas. And we did what needed to be done to get all of our stuff out of our storage units. We had 2 storage units in Las Vegas. And that required sorting through stuff, because if you're going to pay to ship this stuff, you're like, okay, now I have to, after 5, 7 years of this being in storage, do I really want to keep this? And a lot of stuff we let go, a lot of stuff we gave to our kids, which we were hanging on to their stuff anyways. And we actually even took a side trip up to northern BC to give stuff to our kids. So we did a lot of work to sort through. And finally, we had 2 huge U-Haul pods, and we had those shipped across to come to Texas. And then, of course, now we have to go get the pods on the other end, unload them, put in storage, and yada, 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 because we are still in corporate apartments. We have not totally settled down yet, but this is sort of stage one. And I'm telling you, after this, I was just pooped. I was so tired, so pooped with it's emotionally draining to sort through stuff. If you're ever one of those people who have had to sort through an attic or a basement, sorting through storage is even hotter and harder and hotter, especially when you're in Las Vegas. And so that was a lot of work spiritually, emotionally, physically, with recovering from all of that. At the same token, I kept doing business. It's not like I took a time out and said, I'm shutting down my business. I'm an entrepreneur. You have to keep working. So I was working within the cracks of doing all this sorting and moving across the country and everything like that. And part of my business has always been live streaming. And I was starting to be so drained at the end. I was making mistakes. I was doing lives and forgetting to check my mic and all different things. I had problems with guests showing up, not showing up, technical issues, on and on it went. And I really began to think, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I don't know if I want to keep doing this live streaming, which I had been doing for almost 5 years of live streaming every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's kind of like rain. I was like a postman, no matter snow or sleet or rain. I showed up and I went live. I did it in train stations. I did it on vacation. I did it in so many different places. One time we had to move in the middle of a live and I had to literally drive to the library and set up and do my live in the library. But I was so committed to this. And the thing about going live is it's a lot of work. Like, it doesn't look like that much work. You hit that live button and off you go, and people think 30 minutes, that's it. It is way more involved in that because you have to book your guests. You have to write posts. You have to do all the scheduling. You have to make your graphics. You have to schedule the post, schedule the live, attend to the comments, because I never want to ignore the comments. And then you're going to repurpose the live, get some second life out of it. Maybe you're going to turn it into an article or clips. On and on it goes. And it ends up being a lot of work. And when you're a solopreneur, it's like I don't have a team of like little cobblers here doing all my work. It's me. It's me having to do all this. And so it's a lot of work. So essentially, at the beginning of the summer, because of physically, I was so exhausted from the move. And professionally, I was so exhausted from the live streamings. And I still had a foot in two businesses. I had Video Easy Peasy, and I was coming out of being a video coach, a live stream coach, moving towards book coaching. And I was running two businesses at the same time. So I had old clients that I was still helping from Video Easy Peasy. I had new clients from Easy Peasy Books. And that was draining too, because sometimes when you try to ride two horses at once, which is when you're trying to run two businesses, it's exhausting because you feel like you're not really doing either one well. It's like you're just you're getting by, you're helping people, you're doing really good, but it's like you're confusing your market because they're just like, I don't know how many people would say, I didn't know you're doing book coaching because your company still says Video Easy Peasy. So if you confuse, you lose. And that's what I found. So I thought, I need to take a step back and look at my business processes. I need to evaluate, what do I really want to do for a business? Because I had these crazy ideas of like, maybe I'll just go open a food truck. I was just like, I'll just go buy a bus and open a food truck. Maybe I'll throw in some books. It could be a traveling coffee shop, food truck, and library all at once. I just had crazy, bizarre ideas because I was just like, I'm not sure what to do. So I decided I would give myself permission to step off the merry-go-round and actually have a summer vacation. I don't know when's the last time that I took time off. And I still worked. I still did events. I did podcasts. I was still involved with, marketing marathons and all sorts of other things. I still participated. I did a couple of paid sessions. I did free sessions. I continue to, do my own podcast from the vault. So that was a lot of work too, is like going back and listening and figuring out what different lives would be good that I really felt were relevant for authors. So that took a lot of work to do as well. So it wasn't like I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go to the beach for 2 months. I just took a break from the live streaming aspect of my business. And so this is kind of some of the lessons that I went through as I was going through. And really, the big question for me was, what do I want to do? Do I totally want to go all in on book coaching, or do I want to hybrid it? Do I want to go get that bus and just go off and have the coffee shop with a few books in? What exactly do I want to do? And so here's what I did over the summer. I decided it was time to sharpen the saw. And if you find that that's a familiar title, where have I heard that from? It's from Stephen Covey's books, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, which is a fabulous book. And I highly recommend everybody read it. By the way, side note, this book is available right now on Prime Reading app for free. So if you've never read it, read it. If you don't buy it, just go to your public library and get it. There's so many copies of that book out there. And I found that going back and rereading that book really gave me a time out to reflect. What are some of the things? Because, Stephen Covey kind of goes through different aspects of, what we need to focus on. And sharpening the saw comes from a story where he sees this guy. He talks about this metaphor of a guy in a forest who's trying to saw and saw and saw and saw a tree, and he's not getting anywhere. And it's because the axe is dull. And I went, that's me. I am running, racing, running, but I'm never taking time to sharpen the saw. And so I then became very purposeful about my summer. What was I going to do over the next 2 or 3 months? Because that's kind of the time limit I gave myself. And it was July, August, and September that I took off. And I decided I needed to read. I needed to relax. And so that I gave myself permission to read as many books as I wanted to. Some were fiction, some were nonfiction. Sometimes you need fiction because you just need an escape. You need to go out into another world. And so I needed to do that. But I also read a lot of nonfiction. So Stephen Covey's 7 Habits was sort of at the top of my list. And I knew I needed to make some changes. And one of the things he talks about is physical renewal, which is getting outside. And that's what I proceeded to do. I started going on walks, even though it was really hot here. Got up early and I would walk at night, or walk in the morning, or I'd walk late at night. I started going to the gym on a regular basis. And, that's always good exercise, getting out and having an actual routine. And I found I got to work out first thing in the morning, because if I don't work out first thing in the morning, it just never gets done. So I began making that commitment to myself that I needed to take care of my body. But also, too, I needed to be by trees. I needed to get out and hear water and be by trees and go for walks in different places. And that renewed my spirit. But also, too, sometimes I just needed to go sit on the patio and blow bubbles. And, it sounds like such a silly thing. But literally, when you pick up a bottle that has bubbles and you start blowing it, you know what happens? You actually breathe. You slow down. Just the very fact of blowing those bubbles actually calms you. So truly, if you're ever in a situation where you're like, your anxiety is through the roof, I give you permission to go to the store and get yourself a thing of bubbles and sit outside and blow bubbles. And you will notice that you just breathe. It's so wonderful to do that. So then, of course, the mental renewal was reading everything that I could get my hands on. And sometimes I like to go back and reread fiction books. I read a lot of new fiction books, and usually my fiction books are always about bookstores and libraries and, somebody having a wonderful thing. I read an amazing book. I think it was called The Salt Path. And it was about this couple that went and walked this path, across England. And it was just like, oh no, I want to do that. But they were just great ways to escape. But I also reread a lot of books that are very meaningful for me. And one of them was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. That is a hugely impactful book, because when you read about, Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. And when you read about what he went through, and, one of the things that just happened to him was losing his manuscript. And, I can relate to that. I'm going to tell you a story about that in a second. But that idea of like, you're going to the concentration camps and you're worried about you're losing your manuscript. Only another author would get that. It was just like, oh my gosh, to lose your words. But there was a happy ending in terms of he actually was able to write his book, and his book was even better. His book was even better. So, that was a whole thing in itself. But just reading books can be amazing. So I read a ton of books over the summer, and just highly, highly recommend it. And then sort of that social emotional renewal was I spent the summer reconnecting with people. I actually took time to have Zoom calls with people I haven't heard in a while, heard from in a while. And a lot of people, it's like I found their lives weren't in a good place. I reached out to them and I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you around on LinkedIn. What's been going on? And they're like, things haven't been good. We got on a Zoom call and we talked. And it was just like, I am not taking enough time in my life to actually reach out and meet with people. That has nothing to do with business. It's just a true emotional, social interaction. And I did that with quite a few people, quite a few friends. We had a death in the family, so I had to help with that as well. So that just gave me a different kind of connection where sometimes we can get so wrapped up in business, that we just kind of, oh, we're not emotionally available for people. And I kind of felt like I was getting there, that I was just so busy, busy, busy that it was like, I don't have time. Maybe it's your birthday. I'll stop for your birthday, but that's it. And I realized I need to make sure that I put more time in my calendar to do all those kind of things. And then, of course, Stephen Covey also talks about having a creative renewal. He calls it a creative spiritual renewal, but I'm just talking about it as a creative renewal. And for me, it was doing what I call a content audit. I recognized that one of my goals this summer actually was I wanted to go and finish my next book, which I have my book sort of real rough draft, like it's a rough. It's a rough squared, meaning it's like, I don't even know if you'd count it as a rough draft. It's like, it's got all the bones there, but it's got a lot of polishing to do. And what happened was I sat down and I went, I have no bandwidth to do this. And I was heartbroken because it was just like, I thought that's what I was going to be doing this summer, is actually going through that book and, rewriting it and getting it to the point where it was ready for publication. But I recognized I was so burnt out and so tired that there was no way I could even approach that. So what I decided was I'm just going to put that in my sort of folder, be proactive and be organized, and go ahead and put that in the folder of my books in process. So I have a book, I have a folder, it's in Dropbox, and then that way it's totally backed up. And as I was kind of going through there and cleaning up stuff and sorting through stuff, because sometimes when your brain is like not working, doing computer work is really good, because it's like you don't have to be you just have to be organized, but it's a good cleanup time when you just kind of feel burnt out. And I was going through and I went, oh, well, I also have other books that are in the hopper. And I was kind of checking to make sure, where everything was at and were they all well organized. And then all of a sudden I realized I had several books that were missing. And these are books that I kind of like, I call myself the queen of the unfinished manuscripts. I have so many manuscripts that I've started, got to a certain part, and then I stopped. And I'm actually, that's what my book's about, is actually, how do you deal with that? How do you have all these unfinished manuscripts, and, how do you recover from that? So what I found is that those manuscripts were missing. And I was just like, uh-oh, if I don't look for them now, when I have this summer renewal time, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. I might not even remember to go back and do it. So I started to realize that there was something in common with all of the ones that were missing, because I was like, well, where's this one? Where's this one? And I realized that they were all of my Scrivener files. Now, just in case you're not aware of what Scrivener is writing software program. I bought it years and years ago that helps you to write your book if you feel like you want something a little bit more powerful than Microsoft Word. And it allows you to put your ideas in and your research in. So it's kind of like a document management program for writers. And I bought it with the best of intentions years and years ago. And what I found was it was too technical. Like it was just like I needed a whole course to understand this. So I would get in and I'd start writing, and I knew it was like I'm using like 2% of what this program can actually do. It's so powerful. It was actually beyond me to take the time to really learn how to use it. So, I hobbled it together. Most of the stuff I wasn't really using. And for the most part, I was just really I was writing my manuscripts in it. And it's like, for all intents and purposes, I should have just used Word. But I wanted to it was one of those things where you're like, I'm buying this because I'm really committed to writing a book. And who doesn't relate to that? I'm going to get this course because I'm really, really committed. And so you feel like if you spend a lot of money, you're really going to, make that happen. So anyways, those were all of the files that were missing. And I went, okay, where could they be? So of course I'm searching through all my computers and I can't find them, and I can't find them in Dropbox, and I can't find them in Box. But what I found is I found the backups. So I couldn't find the original files. They had just somehow floated off the planet. But I found the backup files and I went, okay, well, that's the good thing of working with Scrivener. Every time you open it, you create a backup files, and your backup files, they were in Box, and Box is kind of like Dropbox. It's an online storage place. And so okay, great. I'll just use the backup files. Well, then I found in order to use the backup files, you have to actually go through, and you have to now go and have the software to unback, to basically recover them. And the problem was I didn't have the software anymore. So it was like, how did I lose this? How did I lose this software? And then I remembered about 2 years ago, I had a computer crash. My MacBook Pro crashed. And I took it to the Apple store, and they were like, no problem, we'll fix it. You did a backup, right? And it was just like, no, because I'd been working so hard. I hadn't done a backup. And it ended up, they had to reformat. They had to actually put in a new motherboard and hard drive and this and that. And for the most part, I was not affected because most of my files, almost all of my files, are always in the cloud. It's just the applications are sometimes on a computer. And so I think one application in particular, Camtasia, is always on my computer. But again, that's all backed up. So that was no problem. But when I had when I got that all done and we put back all my applications, I forgot to put back Scrivener because I hadn't used it for years. So I'd kind of totally forgotten about it. So now it was just like, okay, how do I get Scrivener? So go back, find it, call the people. Could I still use my key, my license that I paid for years ago? They said, yeah, but you're kind of behind, but it's okay. So long story short, I was able to reinstall the software. I was able to take those backups, open them, extract the files, put them in Word documents, and sort out the content. And it made me realize that it's like, this kind of stuff needs to be built into your processes. You have to have time for backups and technical issues. And so that, again, was a great lesson to learn, that it's like you can't wait for a catastrophe. Things can always happen. So you have to be organized. You have to know where all your documentation is. How are you backing things up? What programs are you using? And yada, yada, yada. So that was a huge, huge lesson to learn. So last but not least, I want to talk about my business pivot, because after this whole summer of relaxing, recharging my batteries, and kind of now I feel good. I feel good. I no longer have dreams of the food truck with coffee and books. I'm actually okay about about what my business is and what I want to do. But what I decided is I am 100% all in on business book coaching. That is what I want to do. I want to help people write, publish, and market their business books. I feel there is a need for this, and that is what I want to do 100%. And so, with that commitment and no longer wanting to ride two horses, I had to let go of my old LLC, Video Easy Peasy. Video Easy Peasy was based in Nevada, makes total sense. It was coming up for renewal. I stopped the renewal and let go of that. And so that business has been extinguished. And I now have a new LLC, which is Easy Peasy Books. It is a Texas based LLC because that's where I live now. And I am all in. And of course, when you pivot from one LLC to the other LLC, it is a lot of work. It's actually an amazing amount of work to actually shut down one LLC and open another. Then there's the ramifications of, okay, now you have to change your website, and now you have to change your banking, and your email. The email alone is like, my hair should be straight instead of curly, because I have worked so hard with having to do email and change every program. I'm shocked at the number of businesses that are not prepared for a change of your email address. I've actually had some say to me, you know what? We don't even have a process in place. I'm like, how can you not have a process in place for somebody to change their email address? It's crazy. But again, that is a lot of work. So I've made that pivot and everything is good with that. And so now I have to think about, well, what's my business model moving forward? I want to do business book coaching. That is what I want to focus all of my attention on. And so I have to figure out what is the best way for me to market my business and to serve my audience. And so I decided, number one, I no longer will be live streaming every week. It pains me to let go of that, but I recognize that it is more work than I can sustain. It's too much work to do a continuous every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's noon Central. I can't sustain that anymore. It takes up too much of my time. So I am letting go of weekly live streaming, but I am holding on to the Easy Peasy Books podcast because I want to continue to have this discussion with different authors, sometimes solo, like what I'm doing today. Sometimes there'll be solo episodes, but I really like the idea of continuing to talk to authors and getting people's stories about what was their book journey and learning from industry experts about the writing and the marketing and the publishing of books. And so I want to continue on with that, and I will be doing those, but they will now be recorded podcasts. And so I'm going to still do them as video and audio podcasts. And so anybody coming on my show, just know that the video will still be available. The audio will be available on all the regular podcast platforms, but I am not going to do them as live streams anymore. So that is my sort of biggest moving forward thing. And however, there's always a big but. There's always a big but. I don't want to let go of live streaming 100% because I still love that engagement you get with an audience when you're live streaming and you're open and available for questions. And I understand that publishing a podcast is always just, I'm pushing out the information, whereas the live stream, you're actually having a conversation with people in the audience. And so I really thought long and hard on this, and I decided I wanted to keep this element in my life, but I can't do it on a weekly basis. So what I decided is that I would do it on a monthly basis, and that instead of calling it Live with Gillian and Friends, I want to call that LinkedIn for Authors. And so these live streams will be on LinkedIn, and I will be, again, working with LinkedIn experts who will talk to us about using LinkedIn as a marketable tool for your book. So that's kind of being a micro focus now about, if you are an author and you are using LinkedIn, what do you need to know to be successful on the platform? So that's what I'm going to do these on. I'd like to make these more of a masterclass than just a 30-minute quick live stream, because these are not going to be part of my podcast. This is a separate entity. And so I look at these as live masterclasses, and I look at these as being a dialogue where I want people to come with their questions for me and for my guests. So sometimes it might be multiple people, could be a panel. Sometimes it could be just me and one other person. It might just be me, but these will be live master classes that will be intended to be engaging and a conversation, a dialogue. So I hope that works. And I'm giving myself permission that if I feel like, nah, this doesn't work, then after a couple months, I'll kind of fall back and regroup and see what I want to do with that. But I know that I want to do this at least through the end of 2025. And if it's going well, I'll continue on to 2026. And I'm not going to hedge myself into a particular day and a particular time, because I think it really depends on the schedules of me and my guests. So I think that's sometimes you have to just be flexible about that, and just go lead with your heart. So I wanted to kind of leave you all with some final words today, that sometimes the most productive thing that you can do is to rest. I think of it as our cell phones. They need to sometimes get plugged in and recharged. And there is nothing that is worse, excuse me, there's nothing that's worse than picking up a cell phone and being tied into the wall, and you're trying to talk into the wall, and you're trying to recharge your cell phone at the same time. And you're like, I'm on 13% and I'm still trying to have a conversation and read my Twitter and, everything else all at the same time. So I think sometimes we have to, plug our phones in and let them recharge, or our computers, but most importantly, ourselves. Sometimes we have to step back and hop off that merry-go-round and just say, what is working for me in my life and what is not working for me? Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. It's like, if I'm not a happy Jillian, I can't help other people because I'm too tired and I'm too drained, and I can't be all things to all people. So I have to stop and give myself permission that I had to take a break, and it was good. And so if you too are feeling like, I don't know what's going on with my business, and I don't know where I'm going, and this and that, those are probably signs that you are working too hard. You need to take that time, like Stephen Covey says, to step back and sharpen the saw. Because once you sharpen the saw, it might only take one or two to get that tree cut down. But if you're dealing with a dull saw or a dull axe, it's like it's going to take you a lot longer, and you might never get that tree cut down. So I hope this has been of value for you all today, me sharing my personal story. But I look forward to our future episodes of the Easy Peasy podcast. And then, of course, the once a month LinkedIn for Authors live streams. And thank you all for listening to me today. And we'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody.